Let's start with Chicago and Milwaukee. That feels, I think, like the most fait accompli first round series that we have.
Yeah, yeah. I Vegas odds would agree with that because the Bucks are just so enormously heavily favored, and it's hard to see a pathway for the Bulls to win this one, especially with Lonzo has been declared out for the rest of the season, and I do want to push back against the whole like Bulls are frauds narrative that seems to be popping up because they were really good for the first half of the season. And then, Lonzo and Caruso got hurt and their defense just got blown to smithereens and they just haven't been able to find their footing since.
Yeah. And yeah, that's not, first of all, did anyone have them winning 46 games during the regular season? I think consensus, at least nationally, was that the DeMar DeRozan trade was a mistake. Like they were going to be not even paper tigers. And I'd be curious to see where they were if Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso never get injured. That at the same time, and I don't mean to sound like an asshole by saying this, I don't know what the pathway to them winning this series is. And you're not only missing Lonzo Ball, but Alex Caruso closes the regular season dealing with some back stuff. You showed moments from what I saw during the regular season where it looked like you were capable of defending Giannis Antetokounmpo, but it's just like, how do you do that over the course of a season? And now when your personnel is sort of dwindling, having Patrick Williams might help. I'm just, that might be my biggest question. Actually, it's like, what is the pathway to Chicago winning this series? I think my bigger, like, if we were going to go more granular question is like, what do they do? Or do they try anything with the Vooch minutes? Just because this doesn't seem like a great matchup for him unless the Bucks are going to play Chris Middleton a shit ton. And we know that like you don't want to get to a point where you're relying on Tristan Thompson too much. Is Derrick Jones Jr. at the 5 going to be an option? And so I just feel like they start to run out of bodies that make sense for this matchup pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see this a lot where, personnel and specific matchups are what dictate playoff series. And we'll get to a couple others later where I think that's really going to be a factor in who we're picking to win the overall series. Like one team might be more talented, but they might just be a horrible matchup for another team. Now, the Bucks, of course, are more talented than the Bulls and are a horrible matchup. So I'm with you. It's just really hard, unless Giannis, God forbid, gets hurt in game one. It's hard to see a pathway for the Bulls to win this series because they just don't have an answer for him, or at least not a readily apparent one. And if you're doubling him, he's too good of a passer. He'll pick you apart. The Bucks have too many shooters.
Yeah.
But I don't think they can stop him getting to the rim. I don't think they have the personnel to even build that wall. And I think, it seems like a lot of Bulls fans are down on Vooch in general. I think after this series, the Vooch for Rudy Gobert trade ideas that have been bubbling up are going to be screaming loud.
Yeah, rough season for him. I still think he's just like a really smart decision maker overall, and is someone who's like a vessel through which the ball can get somewhere else. But you also needed him to be higher end on offense. And someone pointed this out in our Discord, but like when you look at his efficiency, it was way more in line this season relative to his career than whatever he did last season was. And he finished the regular season shooting the ball fairly well, over 38% from 3, but I'm with you on all those points. And the other thing is, I'm so not used to looking at season long numbers anymore because I try and break down things in segments so that I'm not like missing the smaller picture, but we have to look at the entire picture of the season. It's not like the Bulls are going to outshoot the Bucks on most nights. They're dead last in 3-point attempt rate. And that's just, look, DeMar DeRozan's been fantastic. But like, that's, if you get behind or if you just need to build big leads, that's sort of a way that you can do that. And their offense really isn't run that way. And then sort of looming over all this is just like, he's playing, but like, what is Zach LaVine's knee going to like that's just this team is just so banged up. And I think you could see him in some of the games towards the tail end of the year where it felt like it was impacting him. He was still just really good, but we're getting to a point where I'm running out of, I can't even just fathom ways in which aside from the catastrophic, which I refuse to get into, just like, how does the team win this series. And so I tend to focus on the front court rotation, but you're going to need, maybe like, is this I guess the thing their pathway would be as I stumble through this, winning the reserve minutes where we have the staggering between Giannis, Chris, and Drew, because Milwaukee's not exactly a billboard for depth at this
Right.
point either. And so, like, what is ever going on with George Hill? I feel like he's had at least 1 trillion issues this season, and that there's never like a concrete prognosis for what he's having. I do think it's good, really good for them that Brook Lopez came back before the year ended.
Yeah.
But just like, I'm worried about their front court. And then it's, if you don't want to go to Giannis at the 5 because he played a bunch during the regular season, just Ibaka, Portis, and even Brook Lopez, like those aren't unwinnable matchups then for Chicago. I hate this series a lot less for them if we just barely see, or we only see Giannis at the 5 in sort of these small measured reserve doses.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bulls have a couple problems in this series. The Bucks personnel just matches up well defensively against them. So you can put Drew Holiday on Zach LaVine, who you mentioned is just not 100% right now. And I think, Zach's going to get his, but maybe not as efficiently or as dynamically as he usually does. You can switch between Drew, Chris, and Giannis on DeMar DeRozan at times. So you can throw different looks at him throughout the course of a game and throughout the course of the series. And if those two guys aren't going, like, you're going to need Vooch to score 25 to 30, which is just not going to happen most nights. And, Lopez, sure, they're going to probably continue playing the drop with him. So maybe Vooch just gets really hot from 3 one night, but can he do it 4 times in 7 games? I don't know. And then you're right. Like the depth for the Bucks is not robust. They're not going 10 deep, but the Bucks, unlike a couple other teams that are going into the playoffs, having already been playing their guys 37, 38, 39 minutes a night, like, Giannis, Drew, Chris all played between 32 and 33 a night. And they're the only guys who played above 30. So, I know it's a joke, because even after Bud finally figured out that you can play your stars more minutes in the playoffs last year, like, maybe let's hope he remembers that lesson, because it resulted in a title. But they might not even have to in this series. Like, they might be able to continue managing their minutes and saving them for the second round, which they get the winner of Boston, Brooklyn, and they're going to need their guys, their stars, to play heavy minutes in that series.
And look, I don't want to be this guy, but there's also just the notion of DeMar DeRozan since 2016, 2017 has about a 57 true shooting during the regular season. That drops to 53 in the playoffs. Like, he's had his issues where that type of style doesn't work. I don't know if it's different with this Bulls team, because you have, if Zach LaVine is fully healthy, and you have Ayo Dosunmu who can do things running off the ball, and if Kobe White is healthy, like, there are a ton of outlets there. But I'm just wondering if the Bulls will be able to mandate pace or style as much. And then I'm sure, or I know this is personnel driven and like how they got unlucky with injuries, but the Bulls are so bad in defense on live balls. They're 27th in points allowed per possession after a defensive rebound. The Bucks have the fastest offense in the NBA by average possession time. This just feels like a very combustible cocktail that is not going to explode in favor of the Bulls.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would be pleasantly surprised if they even get it to 5. Like,
wow. I didn't even get to your X factor yet, and you're already giving them the gentleman's sweep.
I mean, I don't even know if it might just be an outright sweep. Like, the Bulls have just been, they ran out of gas this year, and injuries are a large reason why. But even if they were fully healthy, I would not take them in this series. Like, that's just how bad of a matchup Milwaukee is for them. But you raised a fair point earlier. If they were fully healthy, they probably finish as the 2 seed, and they don't have to worry about this.
Yeah, and I guess the pathway, or not, I'll stop saying pathway, but the fact that the Bucks defense has just been sort of spotty over the second half of the season, like maybe that tilts the Bulls in their favor. Who's your X factor for the Bulls in this series?
Probably Vooch, just because I think he is the one guy who, if he is playing well on both ends of the floor, if he can contain Giannis and, not just give him a full layup line every time he drives in transition, if he is knocking down his threes, he shot 31.4% from three on the season, which is much lower than he has in recent years. Like DeRozan and LaVine, they're going to have to be the main focal points of the Bulls offense and what Milwaukee's going to try to shut down defensively. So I said it earlier, like they might need Vooch to be the highest scoring player on this team to have a chance in the series. And I'm skeptical that that's going to happen.
I think that's a good pick. And I was going to pick the same person, so I'm just going to stick with
nice.
That's terrible podcasting, but I think if I had to nominate someone else, I would say it's Patrick Williams, just because I think he sees the most time on Giannis out of everybody individually, would be my guess.
But man, he's given up a lot of size to Giannis.
Who else are you throwing at him? Javonte Green?
They just don't have a good answer. That's part of the problem with this series. Like, they don't have super tall rotation players.
Currently, Tristan Thompson is thinking that it's Tristan Thompson time. That's
right. Right. Tony Bradley. Are we going to see a Tony Bradley revenge series? I don't know. No team in the NBA has a good answer for Giannis, to be clear. Like, this is not just an isolated Bulls problem here. There are very few teams that can even remotely slow him down. But, unfortunately, we also know that Giannis does not know how to take games or possessions off. And I say unfortunately for the Bulls, fortunately for NBA fans in general. But like, this just projects as Giannis just destroying them over and over again, and them having absolutely no way to stop him.
I don't want to veer too far into the hypothetical and nonsensical. Would you have felt better about the Bulls' chances in this series had they made the Jeremy Grant or Harrison Barnes trade at the deadline?
No. Again, if Lonzo was fully healthy, sure, then I still don't think I would pick them against Milwaukee, though. And I wonder how much that did factor into their thinking at the deadline. Like, they might have seen, okay, Milwaukee looks vulnerable right now, but if they get Lopez back, like, we still don't have a great answer against Giannis here. And, at the time, I'm sure they were hoping to get Lonzo back and healthy at some point, because I don't think it was clear, at the trade deadline that he would not play again this season, but you probably did have to hedge against that possibility. So I'm frankly glad for their sake that they didn't make that trade, that they still have that in their chamber either this summer or at next year's trade deadline. And now we can see, how Patrick Williams fits with this group too.
I'm totally with you. I think this almost the stuff we're saying, I feel like validates their decision to not do something seismic at the deadline. Yeah. Who's your next actor for the Bucks in this series?
It's a good question.
Is it Grayson Allen, and wondering who he's going to
who he's going to injure, who he's going to maim and knock out for the rest of the series? I don't even like. Is it a cop out to say that I don't even know that they need an X factor? Because I just think their top three guys have such an advantage in the series. Like, an X factor to me is someone who can swing a series one way or the other, or even swing a game one way or another. It's like, I don't know that they need that. Maybe Wesley Matthews, just so they can, spare Drew and Chris from having to shoulder so much defensive responsibility on Zach and DeMar. So if Wes can, spot those guys, and like Drew can spend some time on Alex Caruso or Dosunmu or something like that, maybe. But like, again, the series feels so lopsided. It's like, solve the Giannis problem first, and then at that point I will consider, okay, maybe the Bucks need a plan B.
I was just going to go with Brook Lopez for this.
Okay.
Because I feel like I still haven't seen enough of him. He plays in 10 games over the regular season, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And if he's going to be able to give you, like, he ended up averaging like in the mid 20s, if he's able to give you that, I think that without an issue, like without getting injured, or he's like, does Vooch give him any problems? I can't imagine it. I'm just saying, if you're able to do that, it gives you so much more optionality in the front court, because it can technically diminish your dependence on Bobby Portis, who's been a fairly streaky shooter of late. And we know that the Bulls, I don't know that they're the team that's going to like hunt down these mismatches and go after guys. And I think Bobby Portis has been better when he's in space this season, and even towards the tail end of last year. But if it limits the time you have to play Bobby Portis, or it limits the amount of time that you have to go to Giannis at the 5, because maybe you don't want to. I think the Bulls will give you if Tristan Thompson's at the 5, you shouldn't be afraid of sending Giannis to the 5. It's just a different type of matchup than if you're throwing him against like more conventional bigs or stronger, more explosive bigs. But yeah. Brook Lopez can almost set the tone for that center rotation all series. I did think about, in a similar vein of Wesley Matthews, of Pat Connaughton, of just like how much of respite or reprieve can he give Middleton and Drew Holiday and even Giannis from some of the Bulls' tougher assignments. But I'm also just like, I don't want to like, is a half hobbled Zach LaVine and then DeMar DeRozan, who operates like at this methodical pace, is that really going to overwhelm Drew and Chris Middleton? So I settled on Brook Lopez, but yeah, they were tough for me as well. What's your actual prediction for this series? I think you already tipped your hand there.
I think I'm going a full sweep. I don't even know if it's going to be a gentleman's sweep. I think it's just Bucks in 4.
I'm going Bulls in 5 because Milwaukee's defense has been just all over the place for so much of this season. And maybe they're just like, look, if there's a team in the East that's just going to flip a switch, it's not the Nets, it's the Bucks. Like that's the team that can flip the switch. So I feel like this is the coward's pick, Bucks in 5, but I am a coward, so I'm going Bucks in 5.
Maybe I'm just trying to disrespect my podcast co-host, who is a Bulls fan, and he's at least realistic and knows that the season ran off the rails in early January. But I think regardless of how the series ends, the first half of the season was validation for Bulls fans that the overreaction to DeMar DeRozan's contract in particular, and like the whole sign and trade in general, turned out to be just that. It ended up being a very good move. Patrick Williams is only going to get better with more experience, and we'll see what happens with LaVine this summer, but he's given no indication that he's seriously considering moving on. So I think the Bulls are going to be right back in this mix next year, and hopefully they can stay a little healthier.